Hi, I'm Arun George, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, we're looking at why vegetable prices have risen due to the pandemic despite an economic recession. We'll also take a look at what the Indian Council for Medical Research has said on why it's fast tracking the development of a vaccine for COVID 19. But first, we're looking at the political developments in Rajasthan and the removal of Sachin Pilot as the state's deputy chief minister.
आप देखते हो आ बैल मुझे मार जो कहावत है उस रूप में इन्होंने पेश किया अपना रोज ट्वीट करते हैं रोज स्टेटमेंट देते रहते हैं.
That's Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot defending a decision by a majority of the MLAs of the Congress in the state to remove Deputy Chief Minister Sachin Pilot from his post. The legislators also voted to have Pilot sacked as the chief of the party's state unit. Two ministers from the government who have backed Pilot were also axed from the state cabinet. In response, Pilot first tweeted that the truth can't be destroyed, and later tweeted thanking everyone who supported him. He also changed his bio on social media handles to reflect that he was now just an MLA and not the deputy chief minister. These developments came just days after the rebellion by Pilot, who is seen as a rising power in the state. On the 11th of July, there were reports that Pilot had left for Delhi with a group of 30 MLAs who were backing him. Pilot reportedly said that the Ashok Gehlot government was in a minority. To prove him wrong, a meeting of the Congress Legislative Party was called on Monday, and all the party MLAs were told to turn up. All of them, barring Pilot and 18 others, turned up. At the meet, the legislators resolved to take strict disciplinary action against the Congress members involved in anti-government and anti-party activities. But the doors were still set to be open for Pilot's return. On Tuesday, the party took a harder stance. Speaking after the meeting, Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot maintained that the BJP was behind the political crisis and that the same team which worked in Madhya Pradesh is at work here. Pilot's decision to rebel was said to have been prompted by the state police arresting two BJP members for allegedly trying to lure Congress MLAs with large sums of money. Phone recordings were said to mention a fight between Pilot and Gehlot, and that the deputy CM says that he will be the CM. But Manoj CG, who covers the Congress party for the Indian Express, says the relationship between Pilot and Gehlot has been thorny for a while.
The tussle between Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot and Deputy Chief Minister Sachin Pilot, it has been going on even before the Congress came to power in December 2018. If we go back in time, Pilot was appointed the state Congress president in January 2014, a month after the Congress was defeated in the assembly elections. Mr. Gehlot was the chief minister then. The party had suffered its worst ever defeat in Rajasthan. So Pilot, as the PCC president for 5 years, he genuinely thought that if the party returns to power, he will be made the chief minister. That didn't happen because when the party returned to power in December 2018, it was just 6 months or 5 months before Lok Sabha elections. So the leadership then thought that the experienced Gehlot should be at the helm in Rajasthan so that the party can focus on winning more Lok Sabha seats from the state. That was the point where the tussle began. And then in the last 1.5 years, there are a dozen odd examples when they have clashed, at times spoken to each other through media. Immediately after formation of the government was over, when the portfolio allocation was finally done, the chief minister kept 9 departments, including finance and home, considered as very important departments. Although Sachin was the deputy chief minister, he did not get either finance or home. And he was upset at that point of time. Then the power struggle continued. In October 2019, when the government was about to complete its first 1 year in office, there was a decision by the government to allow individuals who had not been directly elected by the people to contest mayoral polls. Sachin, as the president of the Congress party, he objected to that decision, saying you cannot allow people who have not been directly elected by the people to contest mayoral elections. It should be through direct elections on party symbols and all. That order was withdrawn. Then during the first year celebrations, Sachin spoke out again saying the achievements under his ministry was not showcased when the government celebrated the first year in office. If you remember, just 3-4 months ago in March, earlier this year, the Indian Express, we had put out a story which shows with figures saying the Congress government in Rajasthan had spent a little over 25 crore in its first year in office on advertisements. But those advertisements didn't carry the photographs of Sachin Pilot. It only had the photographs of the chief minister. So there were many issues, big and small, but at the root of it was the chief minister's post. All these were manifestations of that problem.
So, with the Congress Legislative Party meeting today, deciding to remove Pilot and two other ministers who've supported him, does that take it to a point of no return now for Sachin Pilot?
We have been speaking to senior leaders of the party. They're all saying that he can still come back, but without any conditions. In the sense, his post, the deputy chief minister post or the PCC president post, one of the posts can be restored, but he cannot set any conditions to the party. Because in the last 72 hours, ever since Sachin came to Delhi along with some of his MLAs and started this rebellion of sorts, the Congress, which is unusually made it a point to let the media know that the Gandhi siblings, both Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi, are talking to him. This is never made public in that sense that they are talking. So this time, the Congress made it a point to let everyone know that the Gandhi siblings are talking to him. Mr. Ahmad Patel, Mr. P. Chidambaram, Mr. K.C. Venugopal, who is the ACC General Secretary in charge of organization, everybody is talking to him. They issued a public appeal yesterday. They issued a public appeal today, that is Monday and Tuesday, asking him to come back. There are problems within the family. That was a message sent to him publicly. There will be problems within the family, but we can talk it out, come back. So an attempt was being made to project that the Congress is showing restraint, is reaching out to him, but he is being adamant. So that message was amply made clear by the party. So now when we are talking to the senior leaders, they are telling us that, of course, the doors are still open to him. He can come back along with those MLAs, but he cannot set any condition and expect that he will be given both the posts back. So now the ball is entirely in Mr. Pilot's court. It is up to him to take a call.
So basically, if he comes back, he needs to compromise with the existing power system?
Yes, it will be a massive loss of face for him, and he will have to make compromises because some leaders said he has crossed the Rubicon. The matter has escalated to such a level that if he comes back, it will be difficult for him in the first place, and the party, of course, may restore the post, but Mr. Gehlot obviously would not agree, even if the High Command pushes him. So it's not clear whether all the posts will be restored to him if he's back, but I don't think that situation may arise because the matter has escalated to such a level that it may not be as easy for him to come back and the party to take all those decisions.
But you mentioned how the party high command, Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, everyone's calling him, they're making it public. Is this very different from how they handled this case of Jyotiraditya Scindia in terms of this sort of public show of almost support for a person when they're showing dissent?
There was none. When Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia resigned from the party, he joined the BJP. Till the moment when he appeared along with top BJP leaders at the BJP office, there was no public appeal to him to come back, and he was not holding any post. Of course, he was holding a party post, but there was no appeal to him so that we can talk it out and all. This time, many senior Congress leaders are telling us that the party has given a long rope to Sachin as compared to Mr. Scindia.
But what is it that makes Mr. Pilot so much more valuable to the party than, say, another dissident like, say, Scindia?
No, both of them are young, charismatic leaders, assets to the party as the party believes. But the difference in Jyotiraditya Scindia and Pilot is that one, Pilot is holding two important posts. He's the Deputy Chief Minister and was President of the state unit. And two, the style of functioning is also different. Some 2 or 3 years ago, Scindia was offered the PCC President post of Madhya Pradesh, but he was not keen for that kind of role. Whereas when Sachin was offered the post of PCC President of Rajasthan in 2014, he willingly accepted that. He showed the kind of hard work he can put in. He worked in Rajasthan as PCC President for 5 years. Of course, the Congress also accepts that he played a major role in the Congress's return to power in Rajasthan. So apart from the personal equations the Gandhi family has with Pilot, which they have with Mr. Scindia too, the party and many leaders believe Sachin has shown a willingness to work in the organization and rise up through the ranks. So in that sense, the party believes he is an asset.
But in the sort of history of Congress, how acceptable is this sort of dissent?
It all depends on situation to situation. At times it is accepted, at times it is not. Many of the leaders, like say from Karunakaran to Arjun Singh to Mamata Banerjee to Jagan, many of these leaders had gone out of the party, many of them came back. But in this case, what is different is that the Congress leaders repeatedly tell the reporters that Sachin is stationed in a BJP ruled state in Manesar in Haryana, and he's enjoying the hospitality of the BJP, protected by the state police. So there was a sense in the Congress that he was in touch with the BJP. Both Sachin had put some conditions before the Congress put some conditions before Sachin. So the main condition the Congress put before him was that he should issue a public statement saying that he is in Congress and will remain with the Congress. That was one of the conditions that the Congress put before him, that you issue this statement and then come to the negotiating table. We can discuss everything out. What Sachin wanted was a change of guard immediately, or at least an assurance and a public commitment from the Congress that he will be made chief minister at least a year before the next assembly elections, which is slated to take place in 2030. So that is where the talks broke. He was not willing to say that I am still in the Congress and will remain in the Congress. That arose the suspicion of the Congress leaders that he is in touch with the BJP. So the entire scenario is completely different then.
So basically, with Ashok Gehlot, with this show of strength, does it like firmly establish him as the man in power in Rajasthan now till the end of the term, like contrary to what Sachin Pilot wanted?
Even now, that is not a given. He has claimed the support of 109 MLAs, and he claims that 104 MLAs were physically present at the Congress Legislature Party meeting on Monday and Tuesday. Many of the top Congress leaders who we speak to are apprehensive about the fate of the Gehlot government. It may not fall immediately. Many of the Congress leaders share that concern. It may not fall immediately, but there is a threat to this government. So we cannot, conclusively say that Gehlot is a man. He has the MLAs, the majority of the MLAs with him. The MLA is required to, show the majority above the simple majority mark of 100. He has the numbers now, but the government will be shaky. That is what the Congress leaders are telling.
So Sachin Pilot's case is also being seen as this case where he's this young leader who wanted to rise and has been stopped by this old guard again. You've had senior leaders voice their introspections about this. Is this really the latest case of this sort of new guard versus old guard?
No, this debate has been on in the Congress for long, but we'll have to go by individual cases. The sense that Congress gives us is that there is no organized old guard or organized young leadership. In the sense, in the case of Sachin, in the last 17 or 18 years since he has been in politics, he has been in Lok Sabha MP, a union minister with independent charge, president of a state unit for 6 years, deputy chief minister. So to say that somebody has prevented his rise in the party would be wrong. Of course, some young leaders may feel they were prevented. Some has risen, some have not. But there is no organized old guard versus young Turks and all. But of course, there is friction. There is massive friction. Many of the leaders believe, they have told us, that these second generation leaders have entered the party without going through the rough and tumble of politics, without doing the hard work. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi has handpicked each one of them, and they have been rewarded. Whereas people who have worked hard in the party for decades have not been rewarded. That is one fault line. Another fault line is many of these young leaders nursing a feeling that the old leaders are not, the veterans, the senior leaders are not giving them the space. So that is another fault line. So there are many fault lines, some of which are true, some of which are not. It depends on a case-to-case basis.
And finally, is this sort of a sign of that high command culture in Congress sort of waning, where everything could be solved in Delhi? I mean, does this show that really maybe not always?
The Congress High Command has always been powerful in various ways, but now, ever since 2014, ever since the party's first ever defeat in Lok Sabha elections, there is a sense that the High Command has gone weak. It doesn't have the moral authority to dictate terms to regional leaders. One example, of course, is Punjab, where Captain Amrinder Singh single-handedly brought the party back to power, and he enjoys more autonomy than any other chief minister or leader in the Congress party. To some extent, that was the case with Gehlot also, but Sachin was always there as a counterweight. So there are different models at play in the Congress. The same thing is happening in Chhattisgarh, where Mr. Bhupesh Baghel is the chief minister, but there is a counterweight in the form of Mr. T.S. Singhdev. He was a strong contender for the post of chief minister, and they're not even on talking terms now. So there is no intervention from the High Command there also. There are complaints in Chhattisgarh as well. There are complaints in Punjab as well about Mr. Amrinder Singh's style of functioning. So the High Command has not been able to impose or impress upon the chief ministers to function in a more balanced way. That's a fact which many of the Congress leaders accept.
The developments in Rajasthan continued into the night with a state cabinet meeting, the appointment of a new state unit chief, and some Congress functionaries declaring that they were resigning. We'll keep you updated about these developments in future episodes of the show. Before we get to the next segment, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say that they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there's perhaps no other place that does this better than the Indian Express's Explained section. We on 3 Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of the newspaper, you know how useful the Explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log into indianexpress.com/explained and access their coverage 24/7. Explained by the Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show. Even as economic growth slows, there's been a steady rise in vegetable prices across India. After plummeting sharply during the lockdown, the price of tomato is above 50 rupees a kilo in many parts of the country. The prices of other vegetables have also risen. We're now speaking with Parthasarathy Biswas, who reports on agriculture for the Indian Express. We're talking to him about why we're seeing a sudden jump in vegetable prices and how long they're expected to last. So, Partha, the vegetable prices have been rising over the past few weeks, and it's even reflected in the latest retail inflation numbers. What's causing this rise?
Now, this is a very unique phenomenon. We see a rise happening when the spending power of the people is low because we are in for some recessionary times. If we look at the price of, say, tomato, there has been quite a steep rise in tomato prices across the country. Data from the Ministry of Food and Consumer Affairs shows that tomatoes, which were retailing at 38 rupees on 1st of April, are now retailing at 60 rupees a kg. Similarly, in places like Pune or Mumbai, in Mumbai, it was 42 rupees a kg on 1st of April. It's now around 57. Across the country, barring a few exceptions, tomato prices are above the 50 rupee mark. So what is happening now? We have to understand that this price rise and this price shock is not organic. What has happened is during the first phase of the lockdown, when India went on a lockdown from April 23rd onwards, there were 2-3 things which were playing up. One was the tomato supply to the country during this winter months happened through the markets of Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, you have the Zunnar belt, which grows the Rabi tomato. The farmers who plant this tomato towards the end of January, beginning of February, and they harvest it in lots till around July. Post which the Rabi tomatoes of Nashik, of again Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh is the biggest tomato producer in the country. They again come into the market. When in March the lockdown happened, 2-3 things were at play. One was that Maharashtra this year has reported multiple virus attacks in tomatoes, which had seen farmers complain of early crop loss and fruit drop. That has affected their production. Secondly, before the lockdown, the tomato prices were pretty much stable. They were around, at the farmer end, that is the wholesale price was around 15 to 20 rupees a kg. And at the retail price, it was because of good supply, it was around almost like 30-40 rupees a kg. However, when the lockdown happened, there was a complete destruction in demand, especially the Horeca business, that is the hotel, restaurant, and catering business. They went for a toss. Everything was shut down. The institutional sales, they contribute around 60% of the total sales of tomatoes and other vegetables, especially tomatoes and onions. So prices nosedived. And by the first week of April, by the first week of May, tomato prices were as low as 1 rupee, 2 rupee a kg at the wholesale end. Now, when farmers, they were not in a mood to invest in more fertilizer, in more control of their crop because the prices were low. So before the new crop hits, there has been a glut in the markets. Since June, we have been opening up our economy. Things are starting up slowly but steadily. There has been a demand. The food processing units are also running. Hotels have started. They're limping, actually. They have not started. They're limping. They're crawling their food deliveries and other things. So there has been a little bit pickup in the institutional sales. However, whatever the demand is there, the supply was even less because the farmers had let go of their crops. So in Zunnar side, the farmers stopped caring or investing in fertilizers and insecticides from end of April onwards. Thus, they have no crops now to bring to the market. And that because of this supply-demand mismatch, prices have shot up. This is basically the same for all the vegetables in the market. Let it be beans, let it be, say, cucumber, let it be, say, bitter gourd. Everywhere the prices have risen. Supply-demand mismatch has pushed up the prices. The supply-demand mismatch has happened because of the lockdown, and secondly, because the farmers did not get enough during those months to care for the vegetable crop. That's why this is happening. Interestingly, this is the time when vegetable prices actually go down because after the good rains in June, vegetables are normally a short duration 3 months crop, most of them. So farmers go for vegetables plantation in May, and their first picking is ready by the end of July, first week of July, second week of July, depending on when they had gone for sowing. So during this time, the prices of vegetable actually come down because supplies increases. However, now they have gone up because the supply is very less. Because the supply is less, the farmers who have invested, who have taken the gamble, are making money. Now, if you ask me, what are the traditional vegetable farmers gone forward? Now, in areas of Marathwada, in other areas where they can take crops like maize, where they can take crops like bajra, or say crops like soybean, some portion of the vegetable growers, almost around 10 to 15%, have shifted from vegetable perishables to non-perishables. That is because they have seen the government being very active and bullish in procuring commodities like soybean, like tuar, and pulses like urad and moong. They have fetched good prices for the farmers. So they have shifted. So the vegetable growing area has shrunk, at least in Maharashtra, a bit. And that is why we see this short-term supply dip, which has pushed up the prices. I think that it will continue for another month or so, post which prices might correct itself.
So basically, a dip only once farmers feel incentive is there for them to grow, or does it mean only when the next crop growing cycle comes in?
Monsoon overall has been very good this year. I mean, compared to last year, we have seen quite a huge increase in sowing numbers this year. But as I told you, some of the farmers have shifted from vegetables to non-perishables like food grains and oil seeds. So the farmers who have grown vegetables, they would be harvesting their first crop towards the end of July or early August. These are the ones who might have gone for vegetable cultivation in the first week of June. So they would be getting their first crop ready towards the end of July or first week of August, and then the supply will improve a bit and the prices might correct itself a bit. However, we have to see how it plays out because things are very uncertain. Now, quite a few important urban markets in Maharashtra are starting a 10-day lockdown from tomorrow. So again, there will be a demand destruction. And if that demand destruction happens, if farmers don't get good prices for the first picking, they might not take care of their crop for the next 2-3 pickings. And again, there might be a price rise, which will be reflected in the retail market for September onwards.
So basically, we kind of expect this sort of seesawing of prices through this year, though it's a recession year?
Yes, I don't think there would be any clear-cut graph or clear-cut indication of prices because the market is very unstable. Let it be vegetables or let it be automobiles. We really can't talk anything about this market because the forces are very new to us. We have the lockdown, we have the recession, we have the uncertainty of the COVID era. So things will be very unstable price-wise, especially in perishables.
Often with such price fluctuations, the concern is, does the farmer actually benefit from this? And in this case, is the farmer actually benefiting from these price fluctuations?
In case of perishables, barring onion, farmers cannot store anything. And the concept of middleman is very much there. Yes, they are the ones who play up the markets, who know how the prices will reflect and everything. But I would say a sizable portion of the prices are going to the farmers, the ones who had invested in vegetables during the lockdown period, the ones who have gone for vegetables who are benefiting from the price rise. While the traders are also benefiting, but the wholesale prices have also risen. We have to see that these are reflected in both the wholesale and the retail prices. So yeah, farmers are benefiting. They might not be getting 60 rupees a kg with the delay consumer might be paying, but they are at least getting say 40 rupees a kg, which is not a bad price.
So the government had introduced this TOP scheme a couple of years ago, which was meant to regulate the prices of the staples, tomato, onion, and potato. Where is that in this scheme of things?
In case of tomato, nothing much has happened in terms of development of value chain, in terms of development of buffer stock. You cannot have buffer stock in tomato. In onion, they have done a lot of work. Even as we speak, NAFED, that is the National Cooperative Agricultural Marketing Federation, is busy procuring onions in Nashik, in other parts of Maharashtra and across the country to create a buffer stock that they will start offloading once the prices are rising more. Onion prices are not very high, so that's not a concern. In case of tomato, you need a whole value chain. You need the cold storages, you need the ref vans to transport, to preserve, because tomato is very prone to destruction if it is not stored properly. So nothing much has happened. Some work had started, but I don't think anything very substantial has happened in that. So top has remained on paper for tomato at least.
The Director General of the Indian Council for Medical Research had earlier faced criticism for writing a letter stating that it was envisaged to launch an Indian COVID-19 vaccine for public use by the 15th of August. We'd even done an episode on the risks of having such a deadline in vaccine development, and the link is in the description. On Monday, the Director General of ICMR, Dr. Balram Bhargav, said that the process of development of an indigenous vaccine should be fast-tracked. But he said it should be done without compromising on the science, quality, and ethics part of it. He also said that India has 2 candidates and they were trying all efforts to fast-track it. Here's a short snippet of what he said.
It is the moral duty that there should not be a delay by not even a day for the IRB or the regulatory clearances for these vaccines, so that we can break the transmission of the virus as soon as possible and take care of this disease, which is a global pandemic.
You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explained page. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know and understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet to us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.